So Ruby, in many ways, pioneered a lot of the tooling that we take for granted in languages today. And so, like, one of the things that's a little interesting here is what you mentioned. I don't know what Bundler does. Basically, like something like npm is like two separate tools in Ruby. So we had like RubyGems, which is like a command that you would run to just like install version 1.0 of this gem. Like that's what RubyGems does. And that was what it existed for a very long time. It's a very old tool. And so then eventually once like people wanted to start being able to like make more complicated, lists of like, here's all my stuff I need to install, like Bundler came along to be like, here is a file where you put in all the versions of all the gems that you want, and then we will resolve which versions are the ones that you actually want, and then write out a lock file and then invoke RubyGems to download all of those gems and then put them in the right places and do that kind of work. So today in many languages that have learned from this past, like those two tools are just one tool. But in Ruby, those are technically two different tools because of just like historically speaking, the second one was developed after the first one. And so like, plus also like, in Ruby development, Ruby and RubyGems are like much more historically closely connected. And so it was like easier to build a new tool on top of it as just some, people than it was to try to like integrate with the existing governance infrastructure. Cause it's just, I don't care about changing RubyGems. I'm just trying to build a layer on top of it that allows me to manage stuff. And so that's like, historically speaking, it just was a more straightforward path, because also like these tools were very controversial when they first came out. There was a ton of people who did not like Bundler and still don't like Bundler and built their own smaller versions of Bundler. And like, it was like kind of much more, it was like less accepted of a way to do development basically when it was new. And so if it had been like put in upstream, that would have been a really big lift politically. Whereas like, you can use this tool if you like it, was much easier to like do. So they're historically like sort of separate in that ways. And so then also, like you have RubyGems, which is the program that downloads those gems and installs them. That's distributed with Ruby itself. So you get that with every Ruby install, you get a RubyGems. But RubyGems.org, the server side of that software, is where it would download those gems from. And so like that's also a piece of software. And so RubyGems.org, RubyGems, Ruby, and Bundler are all like technically maintained by different groups of people, although there is significant overlap between all of those groups of people. So that's like the first sort of like set of players in a strict, like this is the software sense.